He stands before the shrine. Still. Quiet. And for a long moment, nothing happens at all. The air inside the chamber feels different from the rest of the temple. It is cooler, and somehow softer, as if sound itself has chosen to rest here. The stone walls hold a long memory of silence. Even the faint movements of breath seem to fade before they can fully form. The priest does not hurry this moment. He has stood here many times before, and yet each morning feels the same. There is no need for change. The ritual is not about something new. It is about something steady. Something that continues. At last, he reaches forward and opens the small doors of the inner shrine. The movement is slow, careful, almost weightless. Inside, the figure of the god rests in shadow. The statue is not large, but it is made with attention. The lines are smooth. The face is calm. The eyes, though carved from stone, seem to hold a quiet awareness. The priest lowers his head slightly. Not in a dramatic gesture. Just a small, gentle motion. Then, he begins his work. The first act is one of waking. Not waking in the way people rise from sleep, but something softer than that. A recognition. A gentle beginning. The priest speaks a few words, but they are not loud. They are not meant to carry beyond the chamber. His voice stays close, almost blending with the stillness around him. The words are always the same. He has learned them slowly, over many years. Each sound, each pause, each breath between them is placed with care. There is no rush. The words move like the river at night. Steady. Unbroken. After the words, he reaches for a small cloth. It is clean and simple. He uses it to gently wipe the surface of the statue. There is no dust, or very little. The chamber is kept closed, protected from the outside air. But still, this act is done every day. It is not about cleaning. It is about care. His hands move slowly over the stone, following its shape. The face. The arms. The small details that were carved long ago. Each touch is light. There is no pressure. Only attention. Outside, the sun continues to rise. Light begins to spread across the land. It touches the tops of the temple walls, then slowly moves downward. The air grows warmer, but inside the temple, the coolness remains. The world beyond the temple is waking. People begin to move. Fires are lit. Grain is ground. Water is carried from the river. But here, in this inner space, time feels different. Slower. More patient. The priest sets the cloth aside. Next comes the offering. He steps back from the shrine and walks to a small table nearby. On it are simple items, prepared earlier. Bread. Fresh, but plain. A small jar of beer. Thick and slightly cloudy. Sometimes there is fruit. Sometimes herbs. Nothing elaborate. Nothing excessive. These offerings are not about display. They are about routine. The priest lifts the bread first. He holds it with both hands. For a moment, he pauses again. Then he places it before the statue. carefully, quietly, as if placing something fragile, though the bread is firm. The jar comes next. He opens it slowly. The scent is mild, familiar. He pours a small amount into a shallow dish. The sound is soft, almost like a whisper. Then he sets the jar down. Everything is placed in its proper position. Nothing is out of order. Nothing is forgotten. There are more words now. Soft, steady, unchanging. They are not meant to be understood by many. Even the priest does not think about their meaning in a daily way. He knows them. He repeats them. They exist as part of the ritual, like the rising sun or the flowing river. Always present. Always the same. After the words, there is another pause. This pause is longer. The priest steps back slightly. He does not turn away. He remains facing the statue, waiting. There is no visible change. No sound. No movement. And yet, this moment is important. It is the space where the offering is accepted. Not in a visible way. Not in a way that can be measured. But in a quiet, unseen manner. Time passes gently. It is hard to say how long. A few breaths. A few moments. Nothing more. Then, slowly, the priest steps forward again. The offering will not remain here forever. Later, it will be taken away. Shared. Used. Nothing is wasted. Even in ritual, life continues in practical ways. He begins to prepare the statue for the day. A small garment is brought forward. Made of linen. Clean and light. He wraps it around the figure with careful hands. Each fold is placed neatly. Each edge aligned. There is no decoration beyond what is needed. Simplicity is enough. Then comes a small amount of oil. It is placed lightly on the surface. Not to shine, but to protect. To maintain. His fingers move slowly as he applies it. There is no hurry. There is never any hurry. Outside, the sounds of the day grow slightly louder. Still soft. Still distant. But present. A reminder that life continues beyond these walls. Inside the chamber, the ritual nears its quiet middle. Not an end. Just a continuation. The priest steps back once more. He looks at the statue. Not with expectation. Not with question. Just with a steady, familiar awareness. This is his work. This is his place. Day after day. Always the same. Always calm. The doors of the inner shrine are gently closed again. Not locked. Just brought together. The presence remains. Quiet. Hidden. The priest turns slowly and begins to walk back through the temple. His steps are the same as before. Even. Soft. Measured. Nothing in his movement suggests completion or urgency. Only continuation. As he reaches the outer halls, the light has grown stronger. Thin beams of sunlight now reach further into the temple, touching the stone floor in pale patterns. Dust moves slowly in the air, visible only when the light finds it. Floating. Drifting. Unhurried. He steps outside. The day has begun. But for him, the pace remains unchanged. There are more rituals to follow. More small tasks. More quiet repetitions. Each one as steady as the last. Each one as calm. And so the morning continues. Not with excitement. Not with change. But with the same gentle rhythm that has always been there. Like the river. Like the breath. Like the slow turning of the sky, the light outside has grown warmer now. It rests gently across the stone courtyard, spreading in quiet layers that do not rush or change too quickly. The air is no longer cool like the early dawn. It has begun its slow climb toward the heat of the day, though it still carries a softness that will soon fade. The priest stands just beyond the temple entrance. For a moment, he does not move. He lets the warmth touch his face. He breathes in slowly, then out again. There is no clear line between one part of the ritual and the next. Each action blends into another, like water moving around a bend in the river. The morning offering inside the shrine has been completed, but the day itself is still unfolding. There is always more to do. Not more in the sense of urgency, but more in the sense of continuation. He walks along the outer wall of the temple. His feet move across the packed earth, leaving faint marks that will soon disappear under other steps, other movements, other quiet changes in the dust. Nothing here is meant to last for long. Even footprints are temporary. Along the wall, there are simple storage rooms. Their doors are small. Their interiors are dim. Inside them are the objects that support the rituals: bowls, jars, folded cloth, small tools. Each one has its place. Each one is used at the proper time. The priest enters one of these rooms. The air inside is still and slightly cooler. It smells faintly of grain and linen, and something else that is harder to name. Perhaps oil. Perhaps old wood. Perhaps time itself, resting quietly in the corners. He moves without hesitation. His hand reaches for a shallow basket. Inside it are more offerings for later in the day. Small loaves of bread. A few pieces of dried plant. Nothing elaborate. Everything simple. He lifts the basket and carries it carefully. There is no strain in his movement. The weight is familiar. The path is familiar. Even the small sounds, the faint shift of the basket, the soft brush of cloth against his arm, are familiar. Nothing surprises him. Nothing interrupts the calm. In the courtyard, another priest has begun his own quiet tasks. They do not speak at first. There is no need. Each knows what must be done. Each follows the same slow pattern. After a moment, one gives a slight nod. The other returns it. This is enough. Communication here is soft. Minimal. Words are used only when needed. And often, they are not needed at all. Near the edge of the courtyard, there is a low stone table. It is not large. Its surface is worn smooth from long use. Here, the offerings are arranged again. Not for the inner shrine this time, but for smaller rituals that take place throughout the temple during the day. The priest sets down the basket. He removes each item slowly, places it carefully, adjusts its position slightly, then pauses, looks, waits. There is a kind of quiet attention in this act, a patience that does not seek to finish quickly, a patience that allows each movement to be complete on its own. The sun rises higher. Shadows shorten. The brightness grows, but it does not feel harsh yet. A faint breeze passes through the courtyard. It moves lightly across the skin, carries a small trace of moisture from the river. Then it fades. Like everything else, it does not stay for long. Inside the temple, deeper within the halls, another ritual begins. Not in the innermost chamber, but in a space that is still quiet and shaded. A smaller statue rests here. Less important, perhaps, or simply part of a larger whole. The priest walks toward it. Again, his steps are slow. Again, his breath is even. There is no difference in care. No matter the size or importance, the ritual remains the same in its feeling. Steady, measured, unhurried. He places a small offering before this second figure. A piece of bread, a touch of oil, a few soft words. The same pattern repeats. Not exactly the same, but close enough that the rhythm is never broken. Time continues to move, but it does not feel like movement. It feels like stillness that slowly changes. Like light shifting across a wall. Like water moving without sound. Outside, more people pass near the temple. Workers, carrying tools, carrying baskets. Their lives follow a different rhythm. Faster, perhaps. More physical. More tied to the needs of the day. But even they move without hurry. The land does not reward rushing. The river does not move faster because someone wishes it. Everything follows its own pace. A woman pauses near the entrance. She does not enter. She stands quietly. For a moment, she lowers her head. Perhaps she is thinking of something. Perhaps she is simply resting. Then she moves on. No one calls after her. No one marks her presence. It is a small, private moment. And then it is gone. Back in the courtyard, the priest continues his work. There are more items to prepare. More spaces to tend. More small acts that, taken together, form the shape of the day. He cleans a surface. Wipes away a thin layer of dust. Adjusts a cloth. Refills a jar. Each action is done the same way. Carefully. Quietly. Without interruption. There is a comfort in repetition. A calm that comes from knowing what will happen next. Nothing unexpected. Nothing sudden. Only the same steady flow of actions, moving forward without effort. As the morning deepens, the heat begins to settle more firmly over the land. The air becomes heavier. The light becomes stronger. But within the temple, the thick stone walls continue to hold a gentle coolness. A place of shade. A place of quiet. A place where the pace remains unchanged. The priest pauses again. Not because he is tired, but because pauses are part of the rhythm. He stands still, looks across the courtyard, listens. There is no single sound that stands out, only a soft mixture. Distant voices. A bird calling once, then falling silent. The faint movement of air. Then, as naturally as before, he begins again. Another small task. Another careful motion. Another quiet moment that passes without notice. And so the morning continues to unfold. Slowly. Evenly. Without any sharp edges. Without any urgency. Only the same calm repetition, moving gently forward, just as it always has. The morning drifts forward without effort. The sun, now higher in the sky, rests over the land with a steady brightness. The light no longer feels soft at its edges. It has grown fuller, more complete, though still not harsh. It simply remains, spreading across the stone and earth, touching everything in the same quiet way. Inside the temple, the air holds its coolness a little longer. The thick walls keep the warmth outside, slowing its entry. The shadows inside are deeper now, more defined, as if they have settled into their places for the day. The priest moves through one of the inner halls. His steps follow the same path as before, though there is no line on the ground to guide him. He does not need one. His body remembers the way. The turns, the distances, the pauses between each step, they are all known without thought. There is no sense of being early or late. Only the sense of continuing. In a narrow passage, a faint scent lingers. It is soft and difficult to name. A mixture of oil, stone, and something gently sweet. Incense was burned here earlier, perhaps at dawn, perhaps even before. The smoke has long since faded, but its trace remains, held lightly in the air. The priest notices it, but does not stop. There is nothing to adjust. Nothing to correct. The scent belongs here. Like the silence. Like the shadows. He enters another chamber. This one is slightly larger, though still simple. Along one wall stands a low platform. On it rest small objects, figures, bowls, folded cloths. Each item has been placed with care, and each one carries a quiet purpose. He approaches the platform. His hands move slowly over the surface, not touching everything, but acknowledging it. A slight adjustment here. A gentle straightening there. The movements are small. Almost invisible. But they matter. Not because anyone is watching, but because the ritual itself requires this attention. From outside, a faint sound reaches the temple walls. It is the rhythm of work. Someone striking grain. Someone shifting stones. A distant call between voices. These sounds do not disturb the temple. They pass by like a breeze, touching the edges of the space without entering fully. Inside, the pace remains the same. Unchanged. The priest pauses near a small opening high in the wall. Light enters here in a narrow beam. It falls across the floor, creating a pale shape that slowly shifts as the sun moves. Dust drifts through the light. Tiny particles, floating without direction. They rise, they fall, they disappear. The priest watches them for a moment. Not with focus. Not with intention. Just with quiet awareness. Then he moves on. Another offering is prepared. Not for the central shrine, but for a smaller space near the outer hall. The basket is lighter now. Only a few items remain. He carries them carefully, as before. Nothing is rushed. Nothing is skipped. Each part of the ritual holds the same weight, no matter how small. At the edge of the hall, a low stone surface waits. It has been used many times. Its edges are smooth. Its center slightly worn. The priest places the offerings one by one. Bread. A small portion of beer. A few leaves, placed gently beside them. Then he steps back. The words he speaks here are fewer. Softer. Almost like a whisper carried only by breath. They do not echo. They do not travel. They remain close. Held within the space between him and the offering. Again, there is a pause. This pause is familiar. It arrives in the same way each time. Not forced. Not measured. Just present. Time passes without being counted. The air grows warmer. Even within the temple, the change can be felt now. The coolness begins to soften. The difference between inside and outside becomes less clear. Still, the shade remains. Still, the quiet holds. The priest finishes this part of the ritual and turns back toward the courtyard. As he walks, his hand brushes lightly against the stone wall. The surface is smooth in some places, rough in others. The texture is known. Familiar through years of the same motion. Outside, the brightness is stronger. The courtyard is filled with light. Shadows have grown smaller, gathering close to the base of walls and objects. The ground feels warmer beneath his feet. The air rests more heavily on the skin. The other priest is still there. Working. Moving slowly from one task to another. They do not speak. There is no need to mark the passing of time with words. Each understands the rhythm of the other. Each follows his own path within the same quiet structure. A jar is lifted. Checked. Set down again. A cloth is folded once more, though it was already neat. These actions may seem unnecessary, but they are not. They are part of the pattern. Part of the way the day moves forward. Near the entrance, the light forms a wide, pale shape on the ground. It stretches inward, reaching further than before. The boundary between outside and inside shifts slowly. There is no sudden change. Only a gradual movement of brightness. A small insect moves across the stone. Its path is uneven. It pauses, then continues. No one notices. Or perhaps they do, but do not respond. It is simply another small movement in a day filled with quiet motion. The priest returns to the storage room. The air inside feels heavier now. Still. Warm. The scent of grain and cloth lingers. He sets down the empty basket. places it in its usual spot. Then stands for a moment. Still. There is no signal that one part of the day has ended and another has begun. No bell. No call. Only the slow shift of light. The steady rise of heat. The quiet completion of one small task after another. He steps back into the courtyard. The sun is now near its highest point. The light is full. The air is warm and steady. The pace does not change. He walks once more toward the inner parts of the temple. There are still rituals to tend. Still moments to fill. Still the same calm repetition that continues without pause. And so the day moves forward. Not quickly. Not slowly. Just steadily. Like breath. Like the river. Like the quiet turning of the sky above, the sun now rests high above the land. Its light falls straight down, steady and full, covering the temple, the river, and the distant fields in a quiet brightness that does not flicker. Shadows have drawn close to the base of walls and pillars, becoming small and still, as if they, too, have grown tired of moving. The air feels heavier now. Not harsh. Not overwhelming. Just present. A warm layer that settles gently over everything. Inside the temple, the change is softer. The coolness from the morning has faded, but the thick stone still holds a quiet shelter from the full weight of the sun. The air here is calm, unmoving, and slightly warm, like a held breath that has not yet been released. The priest moves through the inner hall once more. His steps remain even, unhurried. There is no sign of fatigue in his movement. Only the same steady rhythm that has carried him through the morning. Midday is not a time of great action. It is a time of holding, of maintaining. The earlier rituals have been completed. The later ones have not yet begun. So the space between them is filled with quiet attention. Small tasks. Gentle adjustments. Moments of stillness. He returns to the central chamber. The door to the inner shrine remains closed. The seal has not been replaced, but the quiet of the space remains intact. Nothing has disturbed it. Nothing has changed. He stands before it once more. Not to begin a new ritual, but simply to be present. The air in the chamber feels slightly warmer now, but still calm. Still enclosed. The scent of oil and faint incense lingers softly, unchanged. He places his hand lightly on the wooden door. Not to open it. Just to feel its surface. The grain of the wood. The stillness it holds. Then he lets his hand fall back to his side. There is a long pause. Longer than the others. Not measured. Not counted. It simply extends, like the stretch of light across the courtyard outside. Far beyond the temple walls, the land rests. Workers slow their pace. Some seek shade beneath simple coverings. Others pause near the river's edge. The sound of movement becomes softer. Less frequent. Even the birds are quieter now. Their calls spaced further apart. Shorter. Back inside, the priest turns and walks toward a shaded corner of the hall. There is a low place to sit. Nothing elaborate. Just a smooth section of stone, worn by use. He lowers himself slowly. Sits. For a while, he does nothing at all. His hands rest lightly on his knees. His breathing is steady. In. Out. In. Out. There are no words in this moment. No offerings. No movement beyond the gentle rise and fall of breath. This, too, is part of the day. Not an absence of ritual, but a quieter form of it. A resting within the pattern. A pause that belongs just as much as any action. The light shifts slowly, though it is difficult to notice at first. The brightness in the courtyard begins to lean, almost imperceptibly, toward the west. The shadows, once gathered tightly beneath objects, begin to stretch again, just slightly. The change is slow. So slow that it feels like no change at all. After some time, the priest rises. Not suddenly. Not with effort. Just a gentle movement upward, as if continuing something that had never truly stopped. He walks again through the hall. His steps sound no different than before. Soft. Even. Measured. He checks the offerings that were placed earlier. The bread remains. The small dishes remain. Nothing has been touched. Nothing has shifted. This is expected. Still, he observes them quietly. Then adjusts one item slightly. A small movement. Almost unnecessary. But still part of the care. A cloth is lifted and folded once more. A surface is brushed clean, though it was already clean. A jar is turned slightly so that it faces a different direction. These are not tasks that demand attention. They are tasks that create it. They allow the day to continue in its steady way. Near the entrance, the other priest stands in partial shade. He looks outward, toward the brightness beyond the temple walls. For a moment, he does not move. Then he steps back inside. No words are exchanged. The understanding remains quiet. Shared without sound. The air carries a faint dryness now. The warmth has settled fully into the day. But inside the temple, there is still a sense of shelter. A place where time feels softer. Where movement remains gentle. The priest returns once more to the inner areas. There are preparations to be made for the later rituals. Not yet. But soon. Always soon. Never rushed. Never delayed. Just approaching in the same steady way. He gathers a few items. Fresh cloth. A small container of oil. Another simple offering. These are placed together carefully. Ready. Waiting. The light continues its slow shift. The day begins, almost without notice, to lean toward its later hours. But for now, it remains in this quiet middle. This still point. Where nothing changes quickly. And everything continues. The priest pauses again. Just for a moment. He looks across the hall. The stone. The shadows. The faint line of light entering from above. All of it remains as it has been. Calm. steady, unmoving. Then, gently, he begins once more. Another small step. Another quiet motion. Another part of the same endless rhythm. And so midday passes. Not with a clear ending. Not with a shift that can be marked. But with a slow fading of stillness into the next quiet part of the day. The stillness of midday begins to loosen. Not suddenly. Not in any way that draws attention. But slowly, almost as if the air itself has decided to move again. The light shifts a little further toward the west. The brightness in the courtyard softens at its edges, and the shadows, once small and close, begin to stretch outward across the ground in long, quiet lines. Inside the temple, the change is felt in small ways. The air, though still warm, no longer feels as heavy. There is a faint sense of movement again. A return to gentle action. The priest stands near the inner hall. For a moment, he remains still, as he has done many times throughout the day. Then, without any clear signal, he begins again. His steps are the same. Soft. Even. Measured. But now they carry the beginning of the afternoon's quiet work. He returns to the small storage room. The door opens with the same soft motion as before. Inside, the light is dim. The shapes of jars and baskets rest in shadow, unchanged since the morning. He moves to a low shelf and selects a fresh piece of linen. It is folded neatly. Clean. Light in his hands. He lifts it and pauses briefly, as if feeling its texture, though he already knows it well. Then he turns and steps back into the hall. There is no clear difference between this action and those that came before. And yet, there is a subtle shift. The day is no longer rising. It is slowly beginning to settle. He walks toward the inner chamber once more. The door stands as it was left. Closed. Quiet. Unmoved. He stops before it. Waits. Breathes. Then, gently, he opens it again. The motion is the same as in the morning. Careful. Unhurried. Inside, the chamber feels familiar. The same coolness, though now softened by the warmth of the day. The same faint scent of oil and stone. The same stillness that seems to rest within the walls. He steps inside. Closes the door behind him. The light here is dim. Almost unchanged from earlier. Time does not seem to move as clearly in this space. It simply remains. He approaches the inner shrine. The small doors are closed. Waiting. He does not open them immediately. Instead, he stands before them. Still. This moment returns again. Just as it did in the morning. Not identical. But deeply familiar. At last, he opens the shrine. The figure of the god rests inside. Quiet. Unchanged. The linen placed earlier remains in place. The oil has settled into the surface. The offerings from the morning are no longer fresh, but they remain as they were left. The priest begins again. Not repeating the morning exactly, but continuing its pattern. A new cloth is brought forward. The old one is removed carefully. Folded. Set aside. Nothing is discarded. Everything has its place, even after its use. The new linen is wrapped around the statue. Slowly. Each fold placed with the same attention as before. There is no variation. No decoration beyond what is needed. The act itself is enough. A small amount of fresh oil is applied. Lightly. The movement is gentle. His fingers trace the surface without pressing. Without haste. New offerings are prepared. Simple. Bread. A small portion of drink. Placed in the same careful manner. The arrangement is familiar. Reassuring. Nothing has changed. The words return. Soft. Steady. Unbroken. They move through the space like a quiet current. Not rising. Not falling. Just continuing. There is a pause. As always. The priest steps back slightly. Waits. The moment holds. There is no sign of response. No movement. No sound. And yet, the ritual feels complete in its silence. After some time, he steps forward again. The offerings will remain for a while. Then they will be taken away, as before. Nothing is wasted. Nothing is forgotten. He closes the inner shrine. Gently. The doors meet with a soft, final motion. The space returns to its quiet, hidden state. He turns and walks back through the chamber. His steps are unchanged. His breath is steady. The rhythm continues. Outside, the afternoon has begun to take shape. The light is warmer now. Softer at its edges. The air moves slightly more than before. A faint breeze passes through the courtyard, carrying a hint of the coolness with it, though it fades quickly. The other priest is once again at work. A different task now. But the same pace. The same quiet attention. They move around each other without interruption. Without speech. Their paths crossing and parting in a silent understanding. The shadows grow longer. Stretching slowly across the ground. Touching new places. Leaving others behind. The change is steady. Unnoticed unless one is watching carefully. The priest returns the used cloth to its place. Folds it again. Sets it down. Every action is completed fully. Nothing is left unfinished. There are more small tasks. A jar to refill. A surface to smooth. A basket to reposition. Each one simple. Each one part of the same gentle flow. The day continues to settle. Not toward an end. But toward another quiet transition. From afternoon into evening. From movement into stillness again. The priest pauses once more. Standing in the soft light. Looking across the courtyard. There is no change in his expression. No sign of completion. Only the same calm presence. Then, as always, he continues. Another step. Another motion. Another quiet part of the day unfolding without effort. And so the afternoon deepens. Slowly. Gently. Without interruption. Like the fading warmth of the sun as it begins its long, quiet descent, the afternoon begins to soften. The sun, once high and steady, has started its quiet descent. Its light is no longer direct and heavy. Instead, it stretches gently across the land, reaching farther, touching the sides of walls and the edges of stone with a warmer tone. The shadows grow longer. They move slowly, almost without being noticed, sliding across the courtyard floor and along the temple walls. What was once bright and open begins to feel calmer, more enclosed, as light and shadow share the space more evenly. Inside the temple, the change is subtle. The warmth remains, but it is no longer rising. It has reached its peak and now begins to settle, just as the day itself begins to settle. The air feels easier to breathe. Lighter. Still calm. Still unmoving. The priest walks once more through the inner hall. His pace has not changed. It has not needed to. From morning until now, every step has followed the same quiet rhythm. There has been no rush, no delay. Only a steady continuation that carries him forward without effort. He pauses near the entrance. The light here is softer than before. It no longer enters as a sharp brightness, but as a wide, gentle glow that spreads across the ground. Dust moves through it, slow and silent, drifting in no particular direction. For a moment, he watches. Not with focus. Just with presence. Then he turns back again. The evening rituals are not yet begun. But they are near. There is a sense of preparation in the air. Not a change in speed. Just a quiet readiness. He returns to the storage room once more. Inside, the shadows are deeper now. The light from the doorway reaches only a short distance before fading into dimness. The shapes of jars and baskets are softer, less defined. He moves by memory. His hands find what they need without searching. A small container. Another piece of linen. A simple tray. He gathers these items slowly. There is no need to carry many things at once. Each trip, each movement, is part of the rhythm. Outside, the sounds of the world begin to shift. The work of the day is easing. Voices are fewer. Movements slower. There is no clear moment when this change begins. It simply happens, gradually, as the light softens and the air cools. The priest walks toward the inner chamber again. The path is familiar. The same steps. The same turns. The same quiet presence. He stands before the door. As he has many times already. As he will many times again. There is a pause. A breath. A stillness that settles into the space. Then he opens it. The chamber greets him with the same calm air. The same faint scent. The same quiet that does not change. He steps inside and closes the door behind him. The light fades. The space returns to its dim, enclosed state. Time feels slower here. More distant. As if the movement of the day cannot fully enter. He approaches the shrine. The small doors wait. Closed. silent. He reaches forward and opens them. The statue remains as it was left. The linen, the oil, the offerings. All in place. All unchanged. This sameness is not dull. It is steady. It is what allows the ritual to continue without interruption. The evening ritual begins. It is not very different from the others. There are no dramatic changes. No sudden shifts. Only a gentle continuation. The priest removes the offerings that were placed earlier. Carefully. Each item is lifted. Set aside. Nothing is wasted. Everything returns to the world outside the shrine. He wipes the surface again. Lightly. Slowly. The cloth moves over the stone with the same calm attention. There is no need to rush. There is never any need to rush. A fresh cloth is placed once more. Folded. Wrapped. Each movement is familiar. Each step known. A final offering is prepared. Smaller than before. Simpler. Bread. A small amount of drink. Placed gently before the statue. The words return again. Soft. Even softer now. As if they, too, are beginning to rest. They do not rise. They do not carry. They remain close, held within the quiet space of the chamber. There is a pause. Longer than before. The priest steps back. Waits. The moment stretches. Like the shadows outside. Like the fading light. Nothing moves. Nothing changes. And yet, everything feels complete in its stillness. After some time, he steps forward again. He closes the inner shrine. Slowly. The doors meet with a soft, final sound. He turns. Walks back toward the entrance of the chamber. His steps remain steady. His breath remains even. When he opens the outer door, the light of late afternoon enters gently. It is warm. Soft. Lower in the sky. The courtyard is quieter now. The other priest continues his work, but there is less to be done. The day has already given most of what it will give. What remains is simple. Small. The shadows stretch further now. Long lines across the ground. Reaching toward the edges of the space. The light rests along the tops of the walls, slowly lowering. A faint breeze passes through again. Cooler than before. It touches the skin lightly, then fades. The priest returns the items to their places. The used cloth is folded. The containers are set down. Everything is arranged as it should be. He pauses once more. Standing in the soft light. Looking across the quiet courtyard. There is no need for words. No need for change. The day is moving toward its close in the same way it began. Slowly. Gently. Without interruption. And so the evening approaches. Not as an ending. But as another part of the same endless rhythm. The same calm cycle. The same quiet flow that carries everything forward. The light continues to fade. It does not disappear quickly. It lowers itself slowly across the land, as if it, too, is following a careful ritual. The warmth of the sun softens into a deeper tone, turning from bright gold into a muted amber that rests gently on the temple walls. The shadows have grown long now. They stretch across the courtyard, touching places that were filled with light only a short time ago. The ground, once bright and open, begins to feel quieter, more enclosed, as the light withdraws. Inside the temple, the change is calm and steady. The walls, which held the warmth of the day, begin to release it slowly. The air becomes softer, easier, carrying a faint coolness that returns with the evening. The priest moves once more through the halls. His steps remain the same. There is no difference between morning and evening in the way he walks. Only the light has changed. Only the air. He pauses near the entrance. The sky beyond is no longer bright. It holds a gentle glow, fading from gold into a soft blue-gray. The shapes of distant trees and low structures become less defined, their edges blending into the dimming horizon. For a moment, he stands and watches. Not with intention. Just with quiet awareness. Then, as always, he turns back inside. The final rituals of the day begin to take shape. They are not louder. Not more elaborate. If anything, they are softer. Simpler. A closing rather than an opening. He returns to the inner chamber. The door stands as it was left. He pauses before it. A familiar stillness. Then he opens it once more. Inside, the chamber feels cooler now. The air has shifted. The faint warmth of the afternoon has begun to fade. The scent of oil and stone remains, but it feels lighter. Less present. As if it, too, is preparing to rest. He steps inside. Closes the door. The light is dim. Almost gone. Only a faint trace enters from behind him before the door meets its frame. He approaches the shrine. The small doors are closed. Waiting. He opens them slowly. The statue remains still. Unchanged. The linen, the offerings, the quiet presence, all as they were. This sameness continues without interruption. It is what allows the day to close as gently as it began. The priest begins the final care of the evening. He removes the last offering. Carefully. Each piece lifted with the same attention as before. Set aside. Nothing is hurried. Nothing is forgotten. He wipes the surface once more. The cloth moves slowly. Softly. There is no need for pressure. Only for presence. The linen is adjusted. Not replaced this time. Only smoothed. Straightened. Returned to its proper shape. There are fewer words now. The quiet has deepened. The voice, when it comes, is almost part of the silence itself. Soft. Low. Barely more than breath. He speaks the closing words. They are familiar. As steady as all that came before. They do not signal an ending. Only a continuation into stillness. There is one final pause. Long. Unbroken. The priest steps back. Waits. The chamber holds the moment gently. Nothing moves. Nothing changes. And yet, something feels complete. At last, he steps forward again. He closes the inner shrine. The doors meet slowly, carefully, sealing the quiet within. Then, he prepares the outer seal. A small mark, placed with intention. It shows that the chamber has been closed, that nothing will enter until the morning returns. He turns, walks toward the door, opens it. The light outside has nearly faded. The courtyard is dim. Soft shadows blend together, forming a quiet gray space where details are harder to see. The sky above holds the last traces of color, fading gently into deeper tones. The other priest is near the edge of the courtyard. His tasks are nearly complete. There is little left to do. They do not speak. They do not need to. A brief glance. A small movement. This is enough. The air is cooler now. A faint breeze moves through the space, carrying the distant scent of the river. It touches the skin lightly, then passes on without staying. The priest returns the final items to their places. The cloth is folded. The containers are set down. Everything rests where it belongs. Nothing is left out of place. He moves toward the entrance of the temple. The large doors stand open still. The last of the light rests along their edges. He places his hands against them. Pushes gently. The doors begin to close. The sound is soft. Slow. Like a long breath being released. As the doors meet, the outside world fades away. The temple returns to its enclosed quiet. Its steady stillness. Inside, the darkness deepens. Not complete, but enough to soften every shape, every edge. The priest stands for a moment. Still. Listening. There is very little to hear. Only the faint movement of air. The quiet presence of stone. Then he turns. Walks slowly away. His steps fade into the inner halls. Then into the deeper quiet. Outside, night settles over the land. The river moves in darkness. The homes near its banks grow still once more. Breathing slows. Voices fade. The temple rests. Closed. Silent. Holding within it the same calm presence that has remained throughout the day. Unchanged. Unmoving. And so the day comes to its quiet close. Not with a clear ending. Not with a final moment. But with a gentle fading. Like light leaving the sky. Like breath settling into stillness. Like the slow, endless rhythm that continues into the night, night settles fully over the land. The last traces of light fade from the sky, leaving behind a wide, dark blue that slowly deepens into black. The stars appear one by one, steady and quiet, filling the space above without drawing attention to themselves. The air cools gently. Not suddenly. Just enough to soften the warmth that remained from the day. The temple stands closed. Its large doors remain still, holding the quiet inside. The stone walls, which carried the heat of the sun, now begin to release it slowly into the night air. The warmth drifts away without sound, leaving behind a calm and balanced stillness. Inside, the darkness is soft. Not complete. Not empty. Just a quiet dimness where shapes are present but not clearly seen. The inner halls hold their silence. The chambers remain undisturbed. Nothing moves. Nothing changes. The sealed door of the inner shrine rests at the center of it all. Behind it, the statue remains as it was left. Wrapped. Cared for. Unseen. There are no words now. No offerings. No movement of hands or cloth. Only stillness. Outside the temple, the land is quiet. Along the river, the water continues its slow, steady path. It reflects the faint light of the stars in broken, shifting patterns that do not last. A small ripple forms, then disappears. Another follows. Nothing remains for long. The homes near the river rest in darkness. Inside, people lie on woven mats. Their breathing is slow. Even. The day has ended for them. Just as it has ended for the priests. A distant sound rises for a moment. Perhaps a night bird. Perhaps the soft movement of an animal. Then it fades again. The quiet returns. Unbroken. Within the temple, the air remains still. The walls hold their shape. The floors hold their silence. The objects placed throughout the space remain exactly as they were left. Nothing shifts. Nothing falls. Everything rests. Time passes. But it is difficult to feel it. There are no tasks to mark it. No changes in light. No movement to follow. Only the steady continuation of night. The priest, now at rest, lies in his simple space. His body has followed the same pattern for many days. Many nights. There is no need for thought. No need for planning. The next day will come as it always does. Quietly. Without surprise. His breathing slows. Matches the rhythm of the stillness around him. In. Out. In. Out. There is no difference between this and the quiet pauses of the ritual. It is all part of the same pattern. The night deepens. The stars move slowly across the sky, though their movement is too gradual to notice in a single moment. Only over time does their position change, marking the passing of hours without sound. The temple remains closed. Its presence steady against the darkness. A place of structure. A place of repetition. A place where each day follows the last without interruption. The sealed shrine remains untouched. The mark placed upon it holds. No one enters. No one disturbs the space. It waits. Just as it always does. A faint breeze passes over the land. It moves along the surface of the river. Across the dry earth. Along the outer walls of the temple. Then it fades. Leaving no trace. Far away, beyond what can be seen, the desert rests. Wide. Open. Silent. Its sands hold the memory of heat, slowly releasing it into the cooling air. Nothing moves there either. Not at this hour. The night continues. Calm. Unchanging. Without event. Without interruption. And yet, within this stillness, there is a quiet sense of return. A gentle preparation for what will come again. The cycle does not stop. It does not pause. It only rests briefly before beginning again. The priest sleeps. The temple waits. The river flows. The stars move. Each in their own quiet way. Each following the same pattern that has always been there. Time passes. Slowly. Gently. Without notice. And somewhere, far to the east, though it cannot yet be seen, the first hint of morning begins its quiet approach. Not visible. Not yet felt. But certain. Steady. Unavoidable. The night holds for a little longer. Then, without sound, without signal, it begins to soften. The darkness lightens just slightly. The stars grow faint at their edges. The air shifts. Almost imperceptibly. The cycle is ready to begin again. Just as it always has. Just as it always will. And in this deep, quiet stillness, the temple rests between two identical days. Held gently in the space between night and morning. Calm. Unmoving. At peace, the darkness begins to lift. Not all at once. Not in a way that can be clearly seen at first. But slowly, very slowly, the deep black of the night softens into a faint gray that rests low along the eastern edge of the sky. The stars remain. For a while. Then, one by one, they begin to fade. Not disappearing suddenly. Just becoming less certain. Less present. The air feels different now. Cool, but lighter. As if something has shifted, though nothing has yet begun. The land remains quiet. The river continues its slow movement, unchanged. The temple stands still, just as it did through the night. Inside, the silence holds. The halls are dim. The chambers closed. The sealed shrine untouched. Nothing has moved. Nothing has changed. And yet, the beginning of the day is already there. Quietly approaching. The priest wakes. Not abruptly. Not with a start. His eyes open slowly, adjusting to the dimness around him. For a moment, he does not move. He simply breathes. In. Out. The same steady rhythm as before. There is no need to hurry. There is never any need to hurry. The day will unfold in its own time. Just as it always does. He sits up. The floor beneath him is cool again, holding the memory of the night. The warmth of the previous day has fully faded. The air is gentle against his skin. Still. Calm. For a short while, he remains seated. This moment returns each morning. A quiet space between sleep and movement. A beginning that does not rush forward. Then, slowly, he stands. His body moves without strain. Without hesitation. The same motions, repeated day after day, require no thought. Only continuation. He walks toward the basin. The water inside reflects the faint early light. Its surface is still, unbroken. He reaches down, cups the water in his hands, and begins again. The washing is the same. Hands first, then arms, then face. Each movement slow, deliberate. There is no splashing, no wasted motion. Only the gentle contact of water against skin. Cool, refreshing, quiet. The water falls back into the basin with a soft sound. Barely more than a whisper. Then stillness returns. Outside, the sky continues to lighten. The gray becomes pale. The pale becomes soft blue. A thin line of gold begins to form once more along the horizon. The same as yesterday. The same as every day. The priest steps away from the basin. His preparation is complete. There is nothing extra. Nothing unnecessary. Only what is required. He moves toward the temple entrance. The path is familiar. The ground beneath his feet unchanged. The air still cool. Still calm. The doors stand closed, as they were left the evening before. He places his hands against them. Pauses. Then pushes gently. The sound is soft. The same quiet movement as always. The doors open slowly, allowing the first light of morning to enter. It touches the stone floor in a thin, pale line. Not strong. Not bright. Just present. He steps inside. The temple greets him with the same stillness it held through the night. Nothing has shifted. Nothing has been disturbed. Everything remains exactly as it was left. He walks through the outer hall. His steps are soft, even, measured. The faint light follows him only a short distance before fading into shadow. At the inner chamber, he pauses. The sealed door stands before him. The mark placed the night before remains intact. This brings a quiet sense of order. A continuation that has not been broken. He examines the seal. Carefully. Quietly. Then, with a practiced motion, he breaks it. The door opens. Slowly. The air inside is cool. Still. Unchanged. He steps into the chamber. Closes the door behind him. The dimness surrounds him once more. Time feels softer here. Less defined. He approaches the shrine. The small doors wait. Closed. Silent. He does not open them yet. Instead, he stands. As he always does. Still. Breathing. Allowing the moment to settle. Then, gently, he reaches forward. And opens the shrine. The statue rests within. Unmoved. Unchanged. The linen remains in place. The quiet presence remains. The same as it was yesterday. The same as it will be tomorrow. The first ritual of the new day begins. Not with sound, but with stillness. The priest lowers his head slightly. His hands rest at his sides. There is no hurry. No need to begin quickly. The ritual unfolds at its own pace. After a moment, the soft words return. The same words. The same tone. Low. Even. Unbroken. They fill the small space without rising beyond it. The cloth is brought forward. The surface of the statue is wiped gently. Not because it needs cleaning, but because the act itself is part of the care. The pattern repeats. Not exactly, but closely enough that nothing feels new. Only continued. Outside, the sun begins to rise once more. Light spreads slowly across the land. The river reflects it in quiet patterns. The homes begin to wake. Inside the temple, the rhythm begins again. Step by step. Moment by moment. The same calm sequence. The same steady flow. The offering is prepared. Simple. Bread. A small amount of drink. Placed carefully before the statue. The words continue. Soft. Steady. Without change. There is a pause. The same pause. The same quiet space where nothing happens. And yet, everything feels complete. The priest steps back. Waits. The moment holds. Then, gently, the ritual continues. Just as it did before. Just as it always will. And so the new day begins. Not as something separate, but as a continuation of what came before. The same movements. The same stillness. The same quiet rhythm that carries everything forward. Like the river. Like the breath. Like the slow turning of the sky, the morning grows a little brighter. Not quickly. Not in a way that feels like arrival. But in a slow widening of light that spreads across the land as if it has always been there and is only now becoming visible again. The temple stands within this light the same way it always does. Quiet. Steady. Unmoved by the change around it. Inside the inner chamber, the priest continues his work. His hands move with the same calm rhythm as before. Nothing in his actions suggests a beginning or an ending. Only continuation. Only presence. The statue remains still within its small shrine. The linen is smooth. The surface is quiet. Everything is as it should be. The offering from the early morning sits in its place. Bread. A small portion of drink. Simple things. They do not change. They do not need to. The priest adjusts them slightly. Not because they are wrong, but because the ritual includes the act of adjustment itself. There is a softness in the air now. A gentle warmth returning from the sun outside. It does not enter the chamber fully. It only reaches the edges of the space before fading into shadow again. The temple holds its own atmosphere. Separate. Calm. Protected. The priest steps back once more. His posture remains relaxed. There is no tension in his movements. No urgency in his breathing. Everything continues at the same steady pace it always has. A pause arrives. The familiar pause. It does not feel new. It does not feel different. It simply returns, like something remembered rather than created. The priest waits. The chamber waits with him. Nothing happens. And yet nothing is missing. Outside, the world has fully woken. The river carries light along its surface in shifting reflections. People move through their morning tasks. Fires are lit again. Water is carried. Bread is prepared. But none of this reaches the temple in any strong way. It remains distant. Softened by distance. Inside, the ritual continues. The priest wipes the surface once more. His cloth moves in slow lines. Left. Right. Then stillness again. The motion is always the same. It does not change with the day. It does not need to. He replaces the cloth. Carefully folded. Placed where it belongs. Every object in the chamber has a place. Every movement returns something to order. Even when nothing appears out of place. The words come again. Softly. Not louder than breath. Not stronger than silence. They settle into the space rather than fill it. The chamber does not echo them. It holds them gently for a moment and then lets them fade. The priest stands still. His gaze remains lowered. There is no expectation. No anticipation. Only the continuation of what has always been done. The offering is checked again. Everything remains unchanged. Bread still whole. Drink still resting quietly in its small vessel. Nothing has shifted. Nothing has been taken. The stillness of the objects matches the stillness of the room. A faint sound reaches the outer hall. Perhaps footsteps in the courtyard. Perhaps movement of stone or wood somewhere beyond the inner rooms. It does not disturb the chamber. It passes through it like a distant memory of the outside world. The priest does not react. He simply continues. A small adjustment of cloth. A gentle placement of an item. A moment of still observation. Each action blending into the next without interruption. Time moves forward again. Not noticeably. Not sharply. Only through subtle changes in light and air that are almost too small to recognize. The day continues without announcing itself. In the deeper silence of the temple, everything remains arranged. Nothing has fallen. Nothing has shifted. The ritual maintains its shape through repetition rather than effort. The priest pauses again. The same pause. The same quiet space that appears between actions. It does not belong to beginning or ending. It belongs only to the flow between them. He breathes. Slowly. Evenly. The breath does not change with the ritual. It simply continues alongside it. And then, as always, he resumes. Another small movement. Another careful act. Another step in the same familiar sequence. The morning ritual does not conclude. It simply continues to unfold. Just as it did yesterday. Just as it will tomorrow. A steady pattern of care. A quiet repetition of presence. a rhythm that never needs to announce itself to be complete. And so the temple remains in its gentle motion, moving without moving, changing without changing, held in the same calm cycle that carries the day forward without ever breaking its quiet tone. The morning light returns again. It does not feel different from the last one. The sky opens in the same slow way, as if it has done this countless times without ever needing to remember the previous one. Pale color spreads along the horizon, soft and familiar, without urgency or change in pattern. The temple stands as it always has. Quiet. Still. Waiting in a way that is not really waiting at all. Inside the inner hall, the priest moves through his first actions of the day. There is no sense that time has passed since the last ritual. Only the return of the same sequence. The same steps. The same careful motions. His hands reach for water. He washes. Slowly. Methodically. As though the water itself understands what must be done. The chamber feels unchanged. The air is neither new nor old. It simply is. A steady presence that does not mark days as separate from one another. The statue remains in its place, just as it has every morning. The linen is adjusted again. Not because it has shifted, but because adjustment is part of the rhythm. Outside, the world follows its own repetition. The river moves. The fields are tended. The same paths are walked. The same tasks are repeated with only small differences that are too quiet to notice in the moment. Even the sounds of the morning feel familiar now. Less like individual events. More like patterns returning. Inside the temple, offerings are prepared again. Bread. Drink. Simple things that carry no weight beyond their presence. They are placed carefully before the shrine, as they were yesterday, and the day before that, and the day before that. The priest does not think in terms of counting days. There is no need for that kind of measurement here. Time is not divided. It is repeated. It is lived as a sequence of familiar actions that return again and again without needing to be marked. A pause arrives. The same pause. The same quiet space where nothing changes. It does not feel empty. It feels complete in its stillness. The priest stands within it, as he always does. Waiting without expectation. Then, the ritual continues. Soft words are spoken. Not louder than breath. Not sharper than silence. They move through the chamber in a gentle rhythm that does not disturb the air around them. The sound fades almost as soon as it forms. The cloth is lifted. The surface is wiped. The motion is unchanged from yesterday. From all the yesterdays before that. Each movement feels like part of something that has no beginning and no end. Only continuation. Outside, the sun climbs again. The same arc. The same rise. The light enters the temple in the same soft lines through the high openings. Dust moves through it, unchanged in its slow drifting. Even the dust seems to follow a pattern that does not vary. The priest adjusts an object slightly. A jar. A cloth. A small offering. each placed back into alignment as if alignment itself is part of the devotion. Nothing is improved. Nothing is corrected in any urgent sense. Everything is simply maintained. Time passes again. But it is difficult to feel it passing. There are no sharp edges between moments. Only one action flowing into the next without separation. At some point, the morning ritual reaches its familiar pause. The priest steps back. Waits. The chamber remains unchanged. The offerings remain untouched. Nothing signals completion. And yet the moment holds a sense of quiet closure before continuing again. Outside, life continues in its slow repetition. People walk the same routes. The river follows the same path. The fields are worked in patterns that repeat with seasonal familiarity, though even seasons feel less like changes and more like variations of the same long rhythm. Inside the temple, nothing feels new. And nothing feels old. The space exists outside of that distinction. It simply continues. The priest moves again. Another small task. Another gentle adjustment. Another act that carries the same meaning it always has, without needing to be reinterpreted or reconsidered. The day does not feel like a separate day anymore. It feels like a continuation of something already in motion long before it began. A cycle that does not reset. Only repeats. The light shifts slightly as the morning progresses. But even that shift feels expected now. Almost unremarkable. Like a breath that has been taken many times before without drawing attention to itself. The temple remains steady in its rhythm. The priest remains steady in his movements. And the ritual remains steady in its repetition. Nothing interrupts it. Nothing changes it. And so the morning continues. Not as something new, but as something familiar returning once again. The same calm sequence. The same quiet presence. The same gentle unfolding of actions that feel less like events and more like memory repeating itself in real time. The morning arrives again. Not loudly. Not as something new. But as something already known, returning without effort, as if it never truly left. The light spreads across the land in the same quiet way it always does. A pale beginning at the horizon, slowly widening, slowly lifting the edges of darkness away without any sense of urgency. The temple stands in this light as it has stood in every morning before. Still. Balanced. Unchanged. Inside the inner hall, the priest moves without pause. There is no sense of starting anymore. No clear moment where one day ends and another begins. Only the continuation of movement that has no clear origin. He washes his hands. The water is cool. Familiar. It touches his skin the same way it always has. The chamber feels the same. The air carries no memory of yesterday or anticipation of today. It simply exists in its quiet state, shaped only by the presence of repeated ritual. The statue remains in place. The linen remains arranged. Nothing needs correction in any meaningful sense. But correction still happens. Because it is part of the rhythm. Outside, the river flows. It does not announce itself. It does not change its tone or pace. It simply continues. The same movement as always, reflected in light that is always slightly shifting but never truly different. The priest prepares the offerings again. Bread. Drink. Placed carefully. The same hands perform the same motions, not with boredom, but with absence of separation between action and memory. It is no longer something learned. It is something embodied. A pause follows. As it always does. The chamber holds stillness in a way that feels complete rather than empty. No one speaks. No one moves. Even the air feels settled into place. Then the ritual continues. Soft words are spoken. They are the same words. Or perhaps they are not remembered as words anymore at all. Perhaps they are simply sound-shaped breath, part of the structure of the ritual itself. They do not stand out. They blend in. The cloth is lifted. The surface is wiped. The motion repeats exactly as it has before, and exactly as it will again. There is no variation that matters here. Only continuity. Outside, the sun climbs through its familiar path. The light enters through the temple in the same angles, forming the same patterns on stone floors that have seen this light countless times without keeping track of them. Even the shadows seem to know where they will fall. The priest adjusts the arrangement. A small movement. Then another. Nothing is changed in any lasting way. Everything is simply returned to its place within the order that has always existed. Time does not feel like progression anymore. It feels like layering. One morning placed over another. One set of movements resting on top of the same movements before it, until they begin to feel indistinguishable from each other. The pause returns. The same pause. It does not signal anything. It simply exists as part of the structure. The priest stands within it, as he always does, neither waiting nor finishing. Just present. And then the ritual continues again. The same sequence. The same quiet attention. The same careful repetition of actions that do not need to be remembered because they are always already known. Outside, life follows the same pattern. Not identical in detail, but similar in rhythm. Work begins. Work pauses. Work continues. Like the temple, the world outside moves in cycles that do not demand notice to continue existing. Inside, the temple remains unchanged. Not because nothing happens, but because everything that happens belongs to the same shape. The same calm structure. The same unbroken rhythm of care and repetition. The priest moves again. And again. Each motion small. Each motion familiar. Each motion part of something larger that never needs to be named. The morning does not feel like a beginning anymore. It feels like continuation without interruption. Like breath that never fully ends between inhaling and exhaling. Like water that never stops being water as it moves. And so the day unfolds without distinction. Not as a single moment, but as a long, gentle repetition of the same quiet life. Nothing new arrives. And nothing needs to. Because the pattern itself has become the meaning. The ritual itself has become the shape of time. And time, here, does not move forward. It simply repeats, the day continues. But the word continues begins to feel less like movement, and more like a condition of existence. The light returns again in the same quiet way, spreading over the land with no urgency, no change in intent. It does not announce itself. It simply arrives, as it always has, as if it has never been absent at all. The temple stands within it. Still. Familiar. As though it has been standing in this exact moment for a very long time. Inside, the priest moves through the same early actions. There is no sense that he is repeating something. Repetition implies memory of a previous act. But here, the actions feel closer to something continuous, like a line that has never broken into separate parts. He washes his hands. The water is cool. The same coolness. The same quiet contact between skin and water that does not feel different from any other morning. The chamber remains unchanged. Not because nothing happens, but because nothing here becomes new in the way the outside world understands it. Everything belongs to the same steady state. The statue remains. The linen remains. The offerings are placed again, and again, and again, without any sense that one version is different from another. Outside, the river flows. But even the river begins to feel less like movement and more like presence. It is always there. Always doing the same thing. Always returning to the same quiet motion that does not seem to begin or end. The priest performs the offering. Bread. Drink. Placed carefully. The motions are identical, but not in a way that calls attention to sameness. They are simply the way things are done. Like breathing. Like standing. Like sitting in still air. A pause follows. The same pause. It does not feel like waiting anymore. Waiting suggests something expected. Something approaching. But here, nothing is expected. Nothing is approaching. The pause is simply part of the structure of the moment. Soft words are spoken again. They arrive gently, as they always do, and fade just as gently. They do not feel like language in the ordinary sense. They feel more like formality of sound. A pattern of breath shaped into meaning that does not need to be actively understood. The cloth moves across the surface again. Slow. Familiar. There is no thought behind the motion. Or perhaps thought exists, but it no longer separates itself from action. The hand moves. The cloth follows. The surface remains the same. Outside, the light shifts slightly. But even that shift feels expected now. It is not noticed as change. Only as part of what has always been happening. The same light. The same return. The same gentle rise. The priest adjusts something small. A jar. A cloth. A placement that might not even need adjustment in any practical sense. But the adjustment is not about necessity. It is about maintaining the shape of the day. The shape that has no visible edges. Time no longer feels divided. There is no clear before this moment or after it. Only the ongoing presence of actions that resemble each other so closely they stop being distinguishable. Even memory begins to soften. The idea of yesterday does not feel like a separate place anymore. It feels like another instance of this same quiet morning. Another layer of the same moment, repeated so gently that the mind stops trying to separate them. The pause returns again. It does not interrupt anything. It simply exists where it always exists. And the priest stands within it. Still. Calm. Neither arriving nor leaving. Then the ritual resumes. As it always does. Without decision. Without hesitation. Without change in tone or rhythm. Outside, life continues in parallel. Not matching exactly, but reflecting the same slow structure. Movement. Rest. Movement again. All of it unfolding in a rhythm that feels natural rather than constructed. Inside the temple, nothing stands apart. No single action feels more important than another. Each part exists only as part of the whole. Each moment blending into the next without resistance. The priest moves again. And again. Each motion familiar. Each motion expected. Each motion part of something that no longer feels like it is being performed at all. The morning does not feel like it is happening. It feels like it is already always happening. Like it has been happening for a very long time, without interruption. And so the cycle continues. Not as a sequence, but as a single, ongoing presence of quiet ritual life. Where nothing changes enough to be noticed. And nothing needs to, the light returns again. But it no longer feels like a return. It feels like something that has always been present, even in the moments when it was not directly seen. The sky slowly shifts into its familiar pale brightness, and the land beneath it does not react. It simply exists within it, as it always has. The temple stands the same as before. Not changed. Not renewed. Just continuing. Inside the inner hall, the priest moves through his first actions. But the idea of first is beginning to lose meaning. There is no sense of starting anymore, because nothing here feels like it ever stopped. The washing of hands happens again. The water is cool. The same coolness. The same gentle contact that does not feel separate from any other moment of water touching skin. The chamber is still. Not in the sense of emptiness, but in the sense of completeness that does not require anything to be added or removed. Everything is already in its place, even when it is being adjusted. Even when it is being moved. Even when it is being used again and again. Outside, the river continues its slow presence. It is not observed as an event. It is simply there. A long, steady movement that does not seem to begin at any point that can be clearly remembered. The offerings are prepared again. Bread. Drink. Placed with the same care. The same motion. The same quiet attention that does not feel like repetition anymore, because repetition requires awareness of difference, and difference is no longer something that stands out. A pause follows. The same pause. But even calling it a pause feels unnecessary now. It is simply the space in which actions rest before continuing again. Nothing more. Nothing less. Soft words are spoken. They do not feel like language that carries meaning from one moment to another. They feel like part of the environment itself. Like sound that belongs to the air rather than the speaker. They rise. They settle. They disappear. The cloth moves again. Across the surface. Slow. Familiar. Not as an act being performed, but as an action that belongs to the structure of the day itself. Outside, light shifts. But even shift feels too strong a word now. It is more like a gentle adjustment that does not register as change. The same brightness, in a slightly different position, still belonging to the same long flow of time. The priest adjusts something small. A placement. A cloth. A detail that exists only within the ritual's internal order, not within any external necessity. There is no sense that it must be done. Only that it is done. Time does not feel like it is passing anymore. It feels like it is remaining. A continuous state that holds everything within it without dividing it into separate parts. Even the idea of earlier becomes distant. Not lost. But softened to the point where it no longer separates itself from now. Everything feels like one ongoing moment with no clear edges. The pause arrives again. It is not noticed as arrival. It simply becomes the space in which nothing changes for a while. And the priest remains within it. Calm. Still. Without expectation. Then movement resumes. The same sequence. The same rhythm. The same careful attention that does not require thought to continue. Outside, life mirrors this in its own way. Not identical. But familiar in structure. A repeating cycle of activity and rest that does not demand recognition to continue unfolding. Inside the temple, nothing stands alone. Every action belongs to the next. Every moment flows into another without separation. There is no boundary that marks one thing as finished and another as beginning. The priest moves again. And again. Not as someone performing a ritual, but as someone within a ritual that continues through him. The morning does not feel like morning anymore. It does not feel like anything separate. It feels like a continuous state of gentle repetition that has no clear origin and no clear destination. And so the day remains. Not progressing. Not repeating. But simply continuing. A steady, quiet unfolding where nothing needs to change in order for it to remain complete. The light returns again. But even the idea of again begins to feel distant. It is not something that arrives after absence anymore. It is more like a soft, continuous presence that shifts gently without ever truly leaving. The sky brightens in its familiar way, and the land beneath it does not respond with change or surprise. It simply remains within the same quiet flow. The temple stands as it always does. Still. Present. Unmarked by any sense of beginning or ending. Inside the inner hall, the priest moves through his actions. But the structure of time around those actions has begun to lose its shape. There is no longer a clear sense of morning as separate from anything that came before it. The washing of hands happens, as it has always happened, and the water feels like the same water that has always been there. Cool. Familiar. Unchanging in its presence. The chamber does not feel like a place that is entered anymore. It feels like a condition that is already ongoing. The statue remains in its position, not as a fixed point in time, but as part of a continuous arrangement that never feels disrupted. The linen is adjusted again, though it does not feel like an adjustment to something new. It feels like maintenance of something that has never stopped being maintained. Outside, the river continues its slow movement. But even movement feels less descriptive now. It is simply there. A constant presence that does not require attention to continue existing. Offerings are placed again. Bread. Drink. Simple things that do not feel like separate acts anymore, but like recurring expressions of the same ongoing structure. They are set down carefully, as always, though carefully no longer feels like effort. It feels like the only possible way for anything to be done. A pause follows. But even pause feels less distinct now. It is not an interruption. It is not a waiting. It is simply the space in which the ongoing continues without needing to move. The priest stands within it, as he always has, without noticing that he is standing in anything at all. Soft words are spoken again. They do not feel like repetition of earlier words. They feel like the same sound continuing through time without ever fully stopping. They rise gently. They settle gently. They fade gently. And nothing about them feels separate from the silence around them. The cloth moves across the surface again. There is no sense of again in the movement itself. Only the movement. Slow. Familiar. As though it belongs to the structure of reality rather than to a choice being made. Outside, the light shifts through its familiar path. But even path feels like too structured a word now. It is simply light being where it is. Changing in ways that do not need to be noticed in order to occur. The priest adjusts something small once more. A placement. A detail. But even detail feels less meaningful as a category. Everything is simply part of the same arrangement that continues without needing to be redefined. Time no longer feels like something that moves forward. It feels like something that surrounds everything equally. A still continuity in which all moments exist at once, without separation strong enough to divide them into distinct parts. Even memory begins to lose its edges. Before it does not feel far away. Now does not feel immediate. They begin to settle into the same quiet layer of experience that does not distinguish between them. The pause returns again. But it does not return from anywhere. It simply appears in the ongoing flow, as it always does. And the priest remains within it. Still. Calm. Unmarked by transition. Then movement resumes. The same sequence. The same rhythm. The same quiet unfolding of actions that do not feel like steps anymore, but like one continuous motion. Outside, life continues in its parallel rhythm. Not separate. Not distinct. Just another expression of the same slow structure that fills everything. Inside the temple, nothing feels like it begins. And nothing feels like it ends. Everything belongs to the same continuous presence of ritual life. A life that does not divide itself into days anymore. Only into moments that flow without separation. The priest moves again. and again. Not as repetition, not as sequence, but as continuation without interruption. The idea of day no longer feels like a unit of time. It feels like a soft layer within something larger that never stops unfolding. And so everything remains, not repeating, not progressing, but simply continuing in a quiet, unbroken state where nothing needs to change in order to remain whole. The light is still here. It never feels like it arrives anymore. It is simply present in a soft, familiar way, as if it has always been part of the space and only gently shifts its position from time to time without changing what it is. The temple stands within it, not as something placed inside a moment, but as something that seems to exist outside of moments entirely. Inside the inner hall, the priest moves. But movement no longer feels like a sequence of separate actions. It feels like a continuous flow that has no clear point of origin. The washing of hands happens again, though again no longer carries any sense of return. The water is cool. Always cool. Always the same. The chamber does not feel like a place that contains rituals. It feels like a space where ritual simply exists on its own, without needing to be started or ended. The statue remains in stillness that does not feel frozen in time, but gently suspended within it. The linen is adjusted, though adjustment no longer feels like correction. It feels like maintenance of something that has never been out of place. Outside, the river continues its movement. But even movement begins to feel like a soft background presence rather than an event. It is there. It flows. It does what it has always done. Without emphasis. Without interruption. Offerings are placed again. Bread. Drink. Simple forms repeated without distinction from earlier versions of the same act. There is no sense that they are new offerings. And no sense that they are old. They are simply part of the ongoing arrangement. A pause follows. But it does not feel like something that happens between actions anymore. It feels like the space in which all actions exist at once, quietly holding them without separation. The priest stands within it, not as someone waiting, but as someone simply present in stillness that has no edges. Soft words are spoken again. But they no longer feel like something that begins and ends. They feel like a low, continuous tone that exists alongside silence without disturbing it. They rise. They settle. They fade. And the chamber remains unchanged. The cloth moves again. Across the same surface. Slow. Familiar. Not as repetition. Not as ritual sequence. But as the natural expression of a space that has always included this motion. Outside, the light continues its quiet shift. But even shift feels too structured now. It is simply brightness in different positions, never fully becoming something new, never fully becoming something else. The priest adjusts something small again. But even small begins to lose meaning. Every action feels equally gentle. Equally contained within the same soft continuity. Nothing stands out. Nothing separates itself. Time no longer feels like something passing. It feels like something surrounding everything at once. Not moving forward. Not returning. Just existing as a single, uninterrupted presence. Even memory becomes less defined. There is no clear sense of what came before this moment. Because before no longer feels separate enough to distinguish itself from now. Everything begins to feel like one continuous field of experience. The pause returns again. But it does not feel like return. It simply exists where it always exists. And the priest remains within it, without noticing entry or exit. Then movement resumes. The same rhythm. The same flow. The same quiet unfolding that no longer feels like repetition, because nothing here feels like it has ever stopped long enough to be repeated. Outside, life continues in its distant echo. But even outside it feels less distinct now. It is part of the same slow, continuous presence that includes everything. Inside the temple, nothing begins. Nothing ends. Nothing changes in a way that can be separated from what came before it. Everything is simply part of the same ongoing stillness that carries itself forward without movement. The priest moves again. And again. Not as actions performed across time, but as expressions of a single continuous state that does not divide itself into moments. And so there is no longer a sense of day at all. Only a long, gentle presence that includes everything without separation. A quiet unfolding that does not unfold. A stillness that does not become different. A life that does not need to change in order to continue. There is still light. But it no longer feels like something that changes the world around it. It feels more like a soft condition of existence, something that is simply present in the same way silence is present when nothing disturbs it. The temple is within it. Not illuminated. Not revealed. Just gently existing inside the same quiet brightness that has no clear beginning. Inside the inner hall, the priest continues. But the word continues has begun to lose its structure. There is no sense that anything is being resumed. No sense that anything was paused. The washing of hands happens as it has always happened. The water is cool. The same coolness. Not remembered. Not repeated. Just present. The chamber does not feel like a space that contains rituals anymore. It feels like ritual itself has become the nature of the space. The statue remains in stillness that does not feel placed there, but naturally belonging to the environment. The linen rests smoothly. Not as something arranged, but as something that is simply part of how the space exists. Outside, the river moves. But even movement feels less like action now. It is simply the state of the river. A constant presence that does not need to be observed in order to continue. Offerings are placed again. But even placement feels less like a decision. Bread. Drink. Simple forms appearing in the same way breath appears and disappears without intention. Nothing about them feels new. Nothing about them feels old. They are simply part of what is here. A pause exists. But it is no longer felt as a pause. There is no sense of interruption or interval. It is simply the space in which everything already is. The priest stands within it without noticing that anything has changed around him. Soft words are spoken again. But they no longer feel like words. They feel like gentle shaping of silence. a sound that belongs to stillness rather than breaking it. It rises. It settles. It fades. And nothing about the space is altered by it. The cloth moves again. But even movement feels less like action. It is simply the way the surface is experienced through touch. Slow. Familiar. Without distinction from any other moment of contact. Outside, light shifts. But even shift feels like too strong a word. It is more like a gradual breathing of brightness that never fully becomes different from itself. The priest adjusts something small again. But small no longer stands apart from large. Everything feels equally quiet. Equally part of the same continuous presence. Time is no longer something that can be followed. It is no longer something that moves from one point to another. It is simply the surrounding condition in which everything occurs without separation. Even memory has softened further. There is no clear sense of earlier actions standing apart from current ones. Everything blends into a single, quiet continuity that does not divide itself into before and after. The pause is present again. But it does not arrive. It does not leave. It simply exists where existence already is. And the priest remains within it without noticing entry or departure. Then movement resumes. But even resumes feels unnecessary now. There is only flow. Only continuation without contrast. Only the same gentle unfolding that never stops long enough to be recognized as repeating. Outside, life continues in its distant, softened rhythm. But even distance feels less defined. Everything feels closer in the sense that nothing is truly separate anymore. Inside the temple, there is no beginning. No ending. No transition that stands apart from what surrounds it. Only a continuous state in which ritual does not occur as an event, but as a way of existing. The priest moves again. And again. But not across time. Not through steps. Only within a single, quiet presence that does not divide itself into moments. And so even the idea of ritual begins to dissolve. It is no longer something being performed. It is simply the shape of stillness itself. A life that does not unfold. A presence that does not change. A quiet continuity that does not need to be noticed in order to remain complete. There is a kind of light that does not feel like morning or evening anymore. It is not defined by time. It is simply present, soft and even, as if the sky itself has settled into a steady, quiet awareness that does not shift in any noticeable way. The temple exists within it. Not as something illuminated. Not as something hidden. Just as something that is there, without needing contrast to be understood. Inside the inner hall, the priest moves. But even the sense of movement has begun to fade at its edges. There is no longer a clear feeling of someone doing something. Only the presence of actions happening in a quiet, continuous way. The washing of hands occurs again. The water is cool. But even cool feels less like a sensation and more like a familiar condition that does not need to be noticed to exist. The chamber holds its shape without effort. Nothing here feels constructed anymore. It feels as if it has always been this way, and will always remain this way, without needing maintenance in the usual sense of the word. The statue is still present. The linen rests as it rests. There is no sense of placement or arrangement. Only quiet existence. Outside, the river continues. But even the idea of continuing feels less distinct. It is simply there. A slow presence that does not separate itself from the land or the air around it. Everything feels part of the same quiet field of motionless movement. Offerings appear again. Bread. Drink. But even appear feels too active. They are simply present, as if they have always been part of the space and have never needed to be placed at all. Nothing about them feels new. Nothing about them feels repeated. They are just here. A pause exists. But there is no longer a sense that it arrives. It does not interrupt anything. It does not follow anything. It simply fills the space that is already there. And the priest remains within it without noticing that anything has changed. Soft words are spoken again. But they do not feel like speech anymore. They feel like gentle shaping of stillness, as if silence itself has a slight texture that can be formed without breaking it. The sound rises. Then settles. Then disappears without leaving a trace of having existed as something separate. The cloth moves again. But even again has lost meaning. There is only movement that does not distinguish itself from stillness. A slow passing over surface that feels like part of the surface itself. Outside, light remains. But it no longer shifts in any way that can be clearly followed. It is simply there, surrounding everything evenly, without direction or emphasis. The priest adjusts something. But even the idea of adjustment feels distant now. There is no sense of correcting anything. Only the continuation of gestures that belong naturally to the space they occur within. Time does not feel like it is passing. It does not feel like it is standing still. It feels like it has dissolved into a continuous presence that does not divide itself into separate moments. Even memory is no longer structured. There is no clear sense of earlier or later. Only a quiet blending of all experience into one soft continuity that does not separate itself into parts. The pause is there again. But it does not appear or disappear. It simply is. And within it, the priest is not standing, waiting, or moving. He is simply part of the same stillness that contains everything without distinction. Then movement resumes. But even resumes is no longer accurate. There is only the ongoing flow of quiet actions that do not feel like actions anymore. Just presence unfolding without edges. Outside, life continues in its distant way. But even outside feels less defined now. Everything feels gently connected in a way that does not require separation to be understood. Inside the temple, nothing feels like it is happening. And yet nothing is absent. Everything is simply part of a single, unbroken state of quiet existence. The priest moves again. But the idea of the priest begins to soften as well. There is less sense of a person performing ritual. More a sense of ritual existing through awareness that does not separate itself from what it is doing. And so even identity becomes quiet. Even action becomes still. Everything settles into a continuous presence that does not require distinction between observer, action, and space. There is no longer a feeling of ritual taking place. Only the feeling of something endlessly, gently being. Without beginning. Without end. Without separation. Just quiet continuity. There is still light. But it no longer feels like something that belongs to a time of day. It does not rise or fall in any meaningful way now. It simply exists, evenly spread across everything, as if the world has settled into a long, quiet moment that does not need to change in order to continue. The temple is within it. But even within feels like too much separation. There is only the same calm presence everywhere. Inside the inner hall, something moves. But it is no longer clear who is moving, or what movement even means in this space. The washing of hands happens, as it always has. The water is cool. But the sensation does not stand out as new or repeated. It is just part of the ongoing softness of existence. The chamber does not feel like a place anymore. It does not feel like it contains anything. It feels like everything that exists here is simply part of the same quiet condition. The statue is present. The linen is present. The offerings are present. But none of them feel separate enough to be named individually in any strong way. Outside, the river continues. But even continues feels distant now. There is only flow that does not feel like movement anymore. Only a gentle presence that does not need direction to exist. Offerings appear again. Bread. Drink. But even appear feels unnecessary. They are simply there, as if they have always been there, and the idea of placing them has dissolved into the quiet structure of the space. Nothing feels added. Nothing feels removed. A pause is present. But it does not feel like a break. It does not feel like waiting. It does not feel like anything standing between actions. It is simply the same quiet openness in which everything already exists. Soft sound arises again. But it does not feel like words. It does not feel like speech. It feels like a gentle shaping of silence that does not disturb what it touches. It rises. It settles. It disappears. And nothing changes. The cloth moves again. But even movement feels like a misunderstanding of what is happening. There is only contact. Only quiet passing over surface that does not feel separate from the surface itself. Outside, light remains. But it no longer shifts in any meaningful way. It does not become morning or afternoon. It does not change direction. It is simply a steady presence that does not define itself through change. Something adjusts. But even adjustment feels unnecessary to describe. There is no correction. No intention. Only the continuation of gentle alignment that does not feel different from rest. Time is no longer present as a structure. It does not move. It does not stay still. It is simply absent as something that can be separated from experience. Only continuity remains. Memory is no longer distinct either. There is no sense of earlier moments existing apart from this one. Everything is part of the same soft field where nothing separates itself enough to be remembered as different. The pause exists again. But it does not arrive. It does not leave. It simply is, as everything else is. And there is no awareness of entering or exiting it. Then movement happens again. But even that sentence no longer feels accurate. There is no clear boundary between stillness and motion. Only a continuous unfolding that does not divide itself into states. Outside, life continues. But even life feels like too defined a concept now. There is only the same quiet presence extending everywhere without interruption. Inside the temple, nothing is happening. And yet nothing is missing. Everything is already included in what is here. Nothing needs to be added for it to feel complete. There is no longer a sense of priest. No sense of temple. No sense of ritual. Only a single, continuous presence in which all distinctions have gently faded. And so there is only this. Not a moment. Not a place. Not an action. Just quiet being, without edges, without separation, without need to define itself in order to continue existing. There is still light. But it no longer feels like something arriving from anywhere. It is simply present, gently spread across everything without direction, without beginning, without end. It does not change the world. It does not reveal anything. It just is. The temple is still here. But even here feels like a word that no longer separates anything from anything else. Stone, air, shadow, and quiet presence all rest in the same soft condition. Nothing stands apart. Nothing needs to. Inside, there is movement. But it does not belong to anyone anymore. It does not belong to a body, or a thought, or even a moment. The washing of hands happens, as it has always happened, but the idea of always no longer stretches backward or forward. It simply feels like now continuing without interruption. The water is cool. And even that coolness does not feel like something noticed. It is just part of what exists. The chamber is no longer a place where things occur. It does not contain ritual. It does not contain time. It is simply a quiet state in which nothing needs to be separated in order to exist. The statue is there. The linen is there. The offerings are there. But none of these feel like separate things anymore. They are all part of the same gentle presence. Outside, the river continues. But even that idea dissolves slightly when it is thought of too closely. There is no edge to its movement. No clear beginning of flow. Only the soft sense of something that has never stopped being what it is. Offerings are present. Bread. Drink. But even presence feels like too much definition now. They are simply part of the same quiet existence that includes everything else without needing arrangement or intention. Nothing is placed. Nothing is removed. Everything is already here. A pause exists. But it does not feel like a pause. It does not interrupt anything. It does not hold anything apart. It is simply the same openness in which everything rests without distinction. Sound appears again. But it does not feel like speech. It does not feel like meaning. It feels like a gentle shaping of silence that does not disturb what it touches. It rises. It fades. And nothing is left behind that can be separated from quiet. The cloth moves. But even movement no longer has direction. There is only touch. Only softness passing through softness. No boundary between action and stillness. No difference between doing and being. Outside, light remains. But it does not shift. It does not travel. It does not change. It is simply a quiet fullness that does not define itself through time. Something adjusts. But even that word dissolves as soon as it is thought. There is no correction. No intention. Only the continuation of a gentle unfolding that does not separate itself into parts. Time is not present. Not absent. It is simply not something that applies here anymore. There is only continuity without structure. Only existence without division. Memory is no longer a path. There is no sense of before or after. Everything is already included in the same soft presence that does not separate experience into moments. The pause is not noticed. Because nothing is separate enough to pause. Everything is already within the same stillness. And then there is no then. Only this. Not as a moment. Not as a state. Not as an ending. Just the quiet presence in which nothing needs to become anything else. No temple. No priest. No ritual. No day. No night. Only the gentle, unbroken stillness in which everything has already settled, without needing to arrive anywhere. And even that thought fades. Not into darkness. Not into silence. But into something softer than both. Where nothing continues because nothing needs to. Where nothing ends because nothing began. Where there is only the calm presence of being, without shape, without name, without separation. And it remains like that. Not as a conclusion. Not as an ending. But simply as quiet, endless stillness.